Every year, over 11 million undocumented immigrants live in the shadows of the United States, each with a story, a hope, and a reason. Some flee violence, others chase a dream they could never afford back home. From the crowded cities of Latin America to the quiet villages of Asia and beyond, entire journeys unfold, risking deserts, oceans, and everything in between. What pushes them to take that leap? Which nations are most connected to this quiet migration wave? You might recognize a few, but others may surprise you. Today, we're counting down the top 15 countries where illegal immigrants in the US are coming from. Number 15. Ecuador. Ecuador. Now, this one might surprise some folks, but trust me, Ecuador has been making serious moves when it comes to migration trends. Just a few years ago, the number of Ecuadorians entering the US irregularly was pretty modest. But fast forward to 2021 and 2022, and boom, we're talking over 100,000 Ecuadorians detained at the US-Mexico border in each of those years. That's up from around 12,000 in 2018. That's nearly a 750% spike in just a few short years. What's going on? Well, it's a combo of rising crime, shaky politics, and an economy that's been rough on ordinary families back home. Inflation has hit hard, and the pandemic didn't help either. And here's the thing. Many Ecuadorians aren't sneaking in through the shadows. A lot of them are flying to Mexico, which doesn't require a visa, and then walking north through some of the most dangerous terrain on Earth. That's dedication and desperation. Once in the US, they tend to settle in places like New York, New Jersey, and even Florida, where communities are already forming. The total estimated undocumented Ecuadorian population in the US is now hovering around 250,000 and rising. And get this, remittances sent back to Ecuador from the US totaled over $4 billion in 2024 alone. That's a huge support system from abroad. So yeah, Ecuador might be number 15, but its story is big, bold, and packed with heart. Number 14. Pakistan. Pakistan. And honestly, it's a fascinating case. While you might not hear about Pakistanis crossing the US-Mexico border in large groups like Central Americans, don't be fooled. Pakistan has quietly built up a sizable undocumented population in the US. Today, estimates suggest around 50,000 to 60,000 Pakistani nationals are living in the United States without legal status. Interestingly, many didn't sneak across borders. They actually came in legally on tourist, student, or work visas and simply stayed after those expired. This is what we call visa overstays. And here's a stat to chew on. In recent years, more than 40% of all undocumented immigrants in the US arrived legally but overstayed, and Pakistanis are a notable part of that group. The top destinations? Think major urban areas like New York City, Houston, Chicago, and the Bay Area, places with long-established Pakistani communities. These folks are often highly educated and working under the radar in tech, healthcare, or small businesses. And fun fact, the Pakistani-American community overall, including legal residents and citizens, sends back about $2.5 billion in remittances every year to Pakistan. So even those living without legal status often support family members across the globe. The path to legal residency can be slow, and many undocumented Pakistanis are stuck in limbo. But their story reflects a more complex immigration narrative, one that's about overstayed dreams, not just border crossings. Number 13. Vietnam. Vietnam. Land of Phay Cho, motorbike chaos, and a unique immigration story. The Vietnamese American community is vibrant and strong, but hiding within it are an estimated 123,000 undocumented immigrants. That's right. Despite having one of the most successful refugee and immigrant integration stories in the US, a significant number of Vietnamese nationals remain without legal status. Most came during the massive post-war migration waves of the 1980s and 1990s, but overstays and visa backlogs have added thousands more in recent decades. Here's a cool stat. Between 2010 and 2020, the number of undocumented Vietnamese in the US actually increased by about 14%, while numbers from other countries like Mexico dropped. Many undocumented Vietnamese immigrants live in California, especially Orange County, home to Little Saigon, and also in Texas and Louisiana. They often work in nail salons, construction, restaurants, or small family-owned businesses. Language barriers and fear of deportation can make it hard to access healthcare or legal aid. And while the U.S. has repatriation agreements with Vietnam, deportations are rare. Many undocumented Vietnamese immigrants have been in the U.S. for 20-plus years, raising American-born kids and building quiet lives. It's a story of resilience, tight-knit communities, and navigating a legal system that sometimes moves at a glacial pace. Despite their undocumented status, many are contributing members of society, sending money home. Vietnam received nearly $18 billion in remittances in 2024, and a slice of that comes from the USA. Number 12. South Korea. South Korea. South Korea, and this one is super interesting because it flips the usual immigration script. South Koreans are among the most educated immigrant groups in the US, and yet, around 174,000 of them are living here without legal status. That's a big number, especially considering South Korea's population is just 52 million. Now, unlike border crossers, most undocumented South Koreans came here through totally legal means: student visas, business trips, even tourist stays. But the tricky part? Many overstayed once they fell in love with American life or struggled to find stable options back home. And yes, visa overstays make up a huge slice of America's undocumented population. About 4 out of every 10 undocumented immigrants in the U.S. fall into this category. Los Angeles is a major hub with over 300,000 Korean Americans living in the metro area. Many undocumented Koreans blend in seamlessly, working in dry cleaners, small shops, or tech support roles, often in Korean-owned businesses. South Korea's strong emphasis on education means many undocumented youth perform well in school, hoping for pathways like DACA or sponsorship. And did you know? In 2024 alone, Koreans in the U.S. sent back over $7 billion in remittances. So even undocumented workers are playing a major role in global economics. South Korea might not be what you think of first when it comes to U.S. immigration, but the numbers and the stories say otherwise. Number 11. Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic, and if you've ever been to Washington Heights in NYC, you already know the vibes. The Dominican community is vibrant, proud, and loud, but nestled within it are around 180,000 undocumented Dominicans. That makes them one of the top sources of unauthorized immigration in the U.S., and their numbers have been steady over the past 2 decades. Like others on this list, many came legally and simply overstayed their visas, but there's also a sizable number who've entered through family-based petitions that got stuck in never-ending backlogs. Dominicans are concentrated in New York, especially the Bronx and Manhattan, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Florida. They often work in service jobs, restaurants, taxis, cleaning, construction, and many live in multi-generational households to keep costs down. Here's something wild. The U.S. Census estimates over 2.2 million Dominicans live in the U.S., and about 8% of them are undocumented. Yet they remain deeply connected to their roots. In 2024, Dominican Americans sent back a whopping $10.3 billion in remittances. Yes, with a B. That's nearly 10% of the Dominican Republic's GDP. From meringue to corner bodegas to family-first culture, undocumented Dominicans are blending into American life while holding onto their Caribbean soul. And they're hoping immigration reform gives them a clearer path ahead. Number 10. China. China, home to ancient dynasties, dragon dances, and one of the top sources of undocumented immigrants in the U.S.? Yep, it's true. Around 210,000 undocumented Chinese nationals are estimated to be living in the U.S., and most of them didn't cross the border in the traditional way. In fact, the majority entered legally with visas, student, business, or tourist, and then overstayed. According to Department of Homeland Security stats, China consistently ranks among the top countries for visa overstays each year. In 2024 alone, over 15,000 Chinese nationals were flagged for overstaying. Many undocumented Chinese immigrants blend into bustling communities in California, especially San Francisco and LA, New York, and even parts of Texas. They often work behind the scenes in restaurants, massage parlors, nail salons, and delivery services. But here's a twist. Some enter the US through dangerous smuggling routes. Snakehead networks, as they're called, charge migrants upwards of $50,000 to $70,000 to get them into the US, often via South America and the Darien Gap. Crazy, right? And once here, life isn't always easy. Many live in fear of deportation or exploitation. Still, undocumented Chinese immigrants contribute significantly to the US economy and send billions back home. Remittances from the US to China totaled over $16 billion in 2024. So while they may be undocumented, their impact is very real, and their journeys often full of grit, hope, and sacrifice. Number 9. Brazil. Brazil. Land of carnival, samba, and soccer magic. But lately, Brazil's also been showing up on US immigration radar in a big way. Today, an estimated 230,000 Brazilians are living in the US without legal status, and the number is growing fast. In 2021 alone, nearly 57,000 Brazilians were apprehended at the US-Mexico border, a huge jump from just 3,000 in 2018. That's nearly a 20-fold increase in just 3 years. What's behind the spike? Political instability, economic crisis, and record-high unemployment in Brazil have pushed thousands to seek better lives abroad. Many fly into Mexico or Central America, since Brazilians don't always need a visa there, and then make the long, dangerous trek north, often walking for days and paying thousands to smugglers. Once in the US, Brazilians tend to settle in Massachusetts, Florida, and New Jersey, where Portuguese-speaking communities are thriving. You'll find them working in construction, hospitality, cleaning services, and Uber-style gig jobs. Interestingly, Brazil is one of the top remittance receivers from undocumented workers in the US, receiving about $3.5 billion in 2024 alone. And fun fact, the Brazilian undocumented population in Massachusetts grew by nearly 40% in just 5 years. Despite their status, many contribute to the local economy, pay taxes through ITIN numbers, and dream of eventual legalization. It's a journey fueled by faith, family, and a fierce Brazilian spirit that never quits. Number 8. Colombia. Colombia. And if you're thinking coffee, salsa, and stunning mountain towns, you're absolutely right. But there's another side to Colombia's story in the US immigration scene. As of now, there are around 240,000 undocumented Colombians living in the US, and those numbers have surged dramatically over the past few years. Just in 2022 alone, more than 125,000 Colombians were apprehended at the US-Mexico border, a massive increase compared to fewer than 6,000 in 2020. That's a 2,000% increase in just 2 years. What's driving it? A combo of economic woes, political unrest, and a spike in crime and gang activity back home. Many fly into Central America and make the trek north, often navigating harsh terrain and risky conditions. Once in the US, Colombians settle heavily in Florida, New York, and New Jersey, especially in cities like Miami and Elizabeth. They find work in construction, childcare, restaurants, and delivery services. Despite the hardships, Colombian immigrants are known for their resilience and hard work. And let's talk dollars. Colombians in the US sent back over $8 billion in remittances in 2024, much of it coming from people working without documentation. That's love in financial form. Whether it's supporting family back home or chasing the American dream, undocumented Colombians are forging ahead with strength, hustle, and a whole lot of heart. Number 7. Venezuela. Venezuela, and let's be real, this one's a heartbreaking yet inspiring story. Venezuela has faced one of the worst economic collapses in recent history, with hyperinflation, food shortages, and political chaos pushing millions to flee. In the US, there are now about 320,000 undocumented Venezuelans, a number that's skyrocketed in the last few years. In 2018, that number was under 100,000. By 2022, over 188,000 Venezuelans were encountered at the US border. That's almost double in just 1 year. And many aren't sneaking in. They're walking across entire countries to get here, often through the deadly Darien Gap in Panama. Some families walk for 20-plus days, sleeping in jungles and facing wild animals and cartels. It's wild and terrifying. Once they arrive, many settle in Florida, especially Miami, Texas, and New York. They often find under-the-table jobs in cleaning, warehouses, rideshare apps, and restaurants. Some are applying for Temporary Protected Status (TPS), but not everyone qualifies. Still, they send money back. Venezuelan remittances from the U.S. totaled nearly $5.2 billion in 2024. That's a lifeline for families still struggling back home. Despite legal limbo, many Venezuelans bring an unstoppable energy, a will to survive, and big dreams. From arepas to reggaeton, their culture is thriving even in the toughest conditions. These folks aren't just escaping, they're rebuilding, one step at a time. Number 6. Philippines. Philippines, a country of 7,641 islands, karaoke champions, and some of the warmest people you'll ever meet. Today, around 350,000 undocumented Filipinos are living in the United States, and many of them arrived legally through tourist, work, or student visas and then just never left. This makes Filipinos one of the largest visa overstay groups in America. In fact, in 2022 alone, over 20,000 Filipinos overstayed their visas. Most undocumented Filipinos are clustered in California, Hawaii, New York, and Texas, often living in tight-knit communities that look out for each other like family. You'll find them working in caregiving, healthcare, food services, and hospitality, jobs that often fly under the radar but are absolutely essential to the American economy. Many undocumented Filipinos pay taxes using ITINs and contribute to Social Security they'll likely never receive. And here's something incredible. In 2024, remittances from the U.S. to the Philippines hit $12 billion, making it one of the top remittance routes in the world. And a big chunk of that comes from undocumented workers. Despite their status, Filipino immigrants are known for their incredible work ethic, strong family values, and deep Catholic faith. Even while living in the shadows, they celebrate life with food, laughter, and love. For many, the American dream is still very much alive. It just takes longer and a lot more patience to reach. Number 5. Honduras. Honduras. With an estimated 560,000 undocumented Hondurans currently living in the United States, the numbers are both massive and rising fast. Between 2020 and 2024, encounters at the southern U.S. border involving Honduran nationals surged past 500,000, making Honduras one of the most represented countries in recent border crossings. What's driving this? A brutal mix of poverty, gang violence, hurricanes, political instability, and sky-high unemployment rates. Over 60% of Hondurans live below the poverty line, and entire families are making the trek to the U.S., often through treacherous routes involving smugglers and cartel-controlled territories. Most settle in Texas, Florida, California, and New York, places where growing Honduran communities offer some safety and support. Many undocumented Hondurans work in agriculture, landscaping, food service, and construction. And while life can be tough, crowded housing, lack of healthcare, and fear of deportation, their determination is unmatched. Here's a number that shows their heart. In 2024 alone, Hondurans in the U.S. sent home more than $8.7 billion in remittances, which accounted for over 25% of Honduras's entire GDP. That's not just a paycheck, that's a lifeline. Despite the risks and the odds, undocumented Hondurans are building new lives, raising kids, and holding on to hope for a brighter, safer future. Their journey is one of survival, sacrifice, and serious grit. Number 4. Guatemala. Guatemala, a country known for its volcanoes, Mayan heritage, and now, a growing number of undocumented immigrants in the U.S., estimated at 750,000. That's nearly 5% of Guatemala's entire population living in the United States without legal status. Why such a massive outflow? Simple. Crushing poverty, violence, political instability, and zero economic opportunity back home. Over 59% of Guatemalans live in poverty, and rural indigenous communities are hit the hardest. In just 2022 alone, U.S. border agents apprehended over 228,000 Guatemalan nationals, including unaccompanied minors and entire families. And the journey here? It's beyond difficult. Many walk for weeks, often through scorching deserts and cartel territory, paying smugglers anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 per person. Once in the U.S., most undocumented Guatemalans settle in California, Texas, and Florida. They work tough, underpaid jobs, construction, meatpacking, farming, and house cleaning, often for below minimum wage, just to survive. Yet they still send money home. In 2024, Guatemalans in the U.S. sent back more than $19.8 billion in remittances, making up almost 20% of Guatemala's GDP. That's not just economic support, that's a lifeline for entire villages. Many undocumented Guatemalans live in fear, but they also live with purpose, working hard, raising families, and chasing a dream that's bigger than borders. It's a story of courage, endurance, and the powerful pull of hope. Number 3. India. India, home to Bollywood, biryani, and now one of the fastest-growing undocumented populations in the U.S. Currently, there are an estimated 725,000 undocumented Indian immigrants living across the United States. That's a staggering number, especially considering that back in 2010, the number was just around 250,000. So what happened? Well, the majority of these folks didn't sneak across the border. Nope, they came in legally through student visas, work permits, or even as tourists. But due to visa backlogs and green card delays that can stretch over 10 to 20 years, many fell into an undocumented status while waiting in limbo. And here's the wild part. Over 80,000 Indians overstayed their visas in 2024 alone. Most undocumented Indians live in California, New Jersey, Texas, and Illinois, often blending into large, tech-savvy Indian American communities. Many work in IT, hospitality, gas stations, trucking, and retail. Despite their uncertain legal status, many undocumented Indians still pay taxes, start businesses, and send billions back home. India received $125 billion in remittances globally in 2024, with the U.S. as the top source. Some undocumented Indians are part of dreamer families, children who grew up entirely in the U.S. but have no legal status. They're deeply integrated, culturally American, and hopeful for reform. India's story isn't about border crossings, it's about a broken system of legal immigration that's left hundreds of thousands stranded. Yet, even in the shadows, they hustle, thrive, and never stop dreaming. Number 2. El Salvador. El Salvador, a country just the size of Massachusetts, yet sending 750,000 undocumented immigrants to the U.S. That's nearly 12% of El Salvador's entire population. And it's not a recent trend. Salvadorans have been arriving in waves since the brutal civil war of the 1980s. But even now, violence from gangs like MS-13, economic instability, and political unrest continue to push people north. In 2022 alone, over 214,000 Salvadorans were apprehended at the U.S. border, including tens of thousands of families and unaccompanied children. Most undocumented Salvadorans settle in California, Texas, Maryland, and Virginia, places with strong Salvadoran communities already in place. They work in construction, janitorial services, hospitality, agriculture, and even as delivery drivers. Despite living in the shadows, many Salvadorans pay taxes and contribute significantly to their new homes. Here's the kicker. In 2024, Salvadorans in the U.S. sent back $7.2 billion in remittances. That's over 24% of El Salvador's GDP. That money feeds families, builds homes, and sends kids to school. Many Salvadorans benefit from TPS, temporary protected status, but it's a fragile lifeline that's constantly under political debate. The journey to the U.S. is long, expensive, and dangerous. Smugglers charge between $8,000 to $10,000 per person. But for many, the risk is worth it. Their story is one of strength, survival, and unwavering commitment to family. They may be undocumented, but they are undeniably part of the American story. Number 1. Mexico. Mexico. With an estimated 4.8 million undocumented immigrants living in the United States, Mexicans make up the largest group by far, accounting for nearly 40% of the entire undocumented population in the U.S. That's huge. While the numbers have declined from a peak of over 6.5 million in the early 2000s, Mexico still leads the list by a wide margin. Why? Its geography, economics, and decades of migration patterns. For many families, crossing the border, legally or otherwise, has been part of their story for generations. In 2022 alone, more than 740,000 Mexican nationals were apprehended at the southern border. But here's something surprising. Visa overstays are now nearly equal to illegal crossings when it comes to Mexican undocumented immigrants. Most undocumented Mexicans live in California, Texas, Arizona, and Illinois, often working in agriculture, landscaping, food services, and construction. And let's talk remittances. Mexicans in the U.S. sent back a jaw-dropping $63 billion in 2024, the highest in Latin America and a lifeline for millions of families back home. Even while living in the shadows, undocumented Mexicans are raising kids, paying taxes, and fueling entire industries. Many have been here for 10, 20, even 30 years, yet still lack a path to legal status. Their story is about resilience, hard work, and deep family roots that stretch across borders. They're not just undocumented, they're deeply woven into the fabric of American life.